The night of August 28th went down in the history of the conflict as the moment when one of the most talked about episodes of recent months took place before the eyes of the whole world. The factory of the Turkish company Bayraktar, located in Kyiv, was hit. This was reported by Ukrainian sources, including Igor Zinkovich, a member of the Lviv City Council. According to him, the facility was hit twice, causing serious damage to production facilities. The plant was in the final stages of launch. The main workshops were ready and the staff had been trained. The production of drones was supposed to start in the next few days. Today, we will tell you everything that is known about how this operation was prepared, what forces and resources were involved, how reconnaissance and targeting were carried out, what the moment of the strike looked like, and what consequences it had. This report will give you the full picture. Subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss any new content and stay up to date on all the key events. The event came as a shock not only to Ukraine but also to the international community. The Bayraktar plant was seen as a symbol of a new era of military cooperation between Kyiv and Ankara. Last year, representatives of Turkey and Ukraine announced that the joint venture would be capable of producing modern drones directly on Ukrainian territory. This was important both militarily and politically. That is why strikes on this facility have already been the subject of heated debate several times. According to Zinkovich, the attack on August 28th was the fourth in the last 6 months. Each of them delayed the launch of the Enterprise, and the current one is said to have caused the most serious damage. Preparation for such operations is never accidental. Sources claim that reconnaissance was conducted over many weeks. Agent networks were used to gather information about the condition of the facility, the progress of construction and installation work, and the location of equipment and personnel. Modern technical intelligence tools also played an important role. Satellites recorded movements, drones conducted surveillance at long ranges, and radio interception made it possible to assess the complex's level of readiness. At some point, it became clear that the facility was close to launch. Reports mentioned that the equipment was already being tested, the personnel were ready to start work, and the first samples could roll off the assembly line in the coming weeks. It was then that the decision was made to strike. But before moving on to the moment of the attack itself, it is important to understand the significance of this plant. Bayraktar is a name that became known throughout the world after the first years of the conflict. Turkish drones were repeatedly used by the Ukrainian army. They proved effective in the early stages, especially in operations against armored vehicles. Joint production in Kyiv was supposed to take cooperation to a new level. Ukraine hoped to be able to mass-produce drones without depending on supplies from abroad. Turkey saw this as a way to expand its influence in the region and strengthen its position in the international arms market. Thus, the strike on the plant had several dimensions. Military, a delay in the production of drones that could be used on the front lines. Economic, the loss of investment and the disruption of plans to develop the defense industry. Political, a blow to Ukraine's image as a country that has demonstrated its ability to create joint projects with foreign partners. There are no random details in this story. Each stage of preparation for the operation was carefully controlled. Intelligence worked ahead of the curve. According to experts, they managed to gather as much information as possible about the internal structure of the plant. And when it became clear that the facility was ready to launch, the planning of the operation entered its final stage. Any major military operation begins long before the first explosion is heard. The strike on the Bayraktar plant in Kyiv was no exception. To disable such a complex facility, multi-level preparation was required. According to open sources, the first information about the construction of this enterprise appeared more than a year ago. Turkish specialists, together with Ukrainian engineers, were creating a modern production complex. The plan was not just to assemble a few prototypes, but to set up a conveyor belt production of drones. This meant having a powerful infrastructure, from workshops and assembly lines to component warehouses and training classrooms for personnel. Intelligence paid special attention to the plant. Agent networks tracked the movements of foreign specialists and noted the arrival of equipment that came through ports and borders. It was reported that some shipments were delivered through Romania and Poland, then transported by rail to the Kyiv region. Each such operation was tracked. Technical intelligence also played a key role. Satellites recorded the growth of production buildings and analyzed the intensity of work at the construction site. From space, it was possible to determine when the facility had moved from the assembly stage to the commissioning stage. The images showed activity at night, the appearance of new hangars, and the installation of security systems. Radio interception was also of considerable importance. Negotiations between contractors and exchanges of messages between Ukrainian agencies and Turkish specialists all provided a picture of the facility's readiness. Experts note that interceptions made it possible to understand the launch dates and the level of completion of the project. The role of long-range drones deserves a separate mention. They not only recorded the movement of cargo, but also monitored the route to the facility. Such devices are capable of remaining in the air for hours, transmitting video in real time. This made it possible to assess the level of security at the plant, the number of patrols, and the presence of air defense systems. When the collected data began to form a single mosaic, analysts concluded that the plant was close to opening. According to reports from the Ukrainian side, staff training had been completed, the workshops were ready to start up, and the lines had been set up. And although the official grand opening had not yet taken place, the plant was effectively ready to be put into operation. At this point, the next stage began, planning the strike. The question was not only how to deliver a precise strike, but also how to make it as effective as possible. It was necessary to disable not just the building, but key production facilities. And here, intelligence data on the internal layout played a decisive role. According to Deputy Igor Zinkovich, 2 direct hits were recorded at the plant on the night of August 28th. This means that the guidance system worked with extreme precision. Experts note that to achieve such a result, not only high-precision weapons are required, but also the most accurate information about the target. The operation was prepared in strict secrecy. In such cases, not only the military, but also civilian analytical structures that process open data are involved. Social networks, media publications, photos of workers that accidentally ended up on the internet, all of this can be used to clarify details. Even something as small as an Instagram photo from the factory grounds can be an important element in piecing together the full picture. Particular attention was paid to the approach routes. The Kyiv region is one of the most heavily defended regions of Ukraine. It is home to air defense complexes, radars, and anti-aircraft units. To overcome such defenses, it is necessary to carefully calculate the trajectory and timing of the attack. According to Ukrainian sources, on the night of August 28th, Russia used more than 740 different aircraft. This was a record for the scale of drone and missile use in the entire conflict. Against the backdrop of such a massive strike, individual targets, including the Bayraktar factory, were hit. This came as a surprise to Ukraine. Officials in Kyiv said the facility had not yet been put into operation, but acknowledged that the damage was serious. According to Zinkovich, production has been set back. He stressed that this was the 4th strike on the plant in the last 6 months. Each time, the launch was postponed. Thus, the preparation for the operation resembled a chess game. First, intelligence was gathered. Then logistics chains were established. After that, an attack plan was developed, taking into account all the details: time, trajectory, number of weapons, cover, and only when all the elements came together into a single scheme was the start given. The night of August 28th, the Kyiv region is plunged into darkness. The city is asleep, but the first flashes are already visible on the horizon. At this time, one of the largest raids of the entire conflict began. The Ukrainian side later stated that more than 740 targets were detected in the air, including drones and missiles of various classes. This massive strike overwhelmed the air defense system. The fateful episode took place on the outskirts of Kyiv, where the Turkish company Bayraktar had a factory. The facility was considered secure. Air defense units were on duty in the area, detection systems were in place, and constant patrols were conducted. But with dozens of strikes being recorded across the country, the air defense forces were scattered. Video footage posted on social media shows the moment of a bright flash. Outdoor surveillance cameras capture the dark sky, followed by a blinding light and clouds of smoke rising into the sky. According to Igor Zinkovich, a member of the Lviv City Council, 2 direct hits were recorded at the plant. He noted that the production facilities had suffered serious damage. These words are confirmed by footage posted by bloggers. Black and white recordings from night cameras show flashes appearing on the roof of the factory, followed by flames. Seconds turn into minutes, the fire spreads, and thick smoke spreads throughout the area. Sirens can be heard in the city, and civil defense systems are activated. The Bayraktar plant was in the final stages of launch. According to experts, the main lines had already been installed. The staff had been trained, and the equipment had been tested. Everything was ready to start producing drones in the coming weeks. That is why the strike was so painful for Kyiv. The first reports of the incident sparked a wave of discussion. Some sources claimed that the damage was not critical and that recovery would only take a few weeks. Others said that production would have to be postponed indefinitely. Zinkovich stated outright that the plant had suffered serious damage. Smoke rose above the area for a long time. Firefighters tried to localize the fire, but the fire continued to spread, engulfing new areas. According to eyewitnesses, the smell of burning was felt in several areas of the capital. Local residents posted footage on the internet, accompanying it with alarming comments. The Kyiv authorities confirmed the attack but refrained from giving details. Official statements were cautious. It was emphasized that the facility had not yet been put into operation. However, the mention of damage to production facilities speaks for itself. Over the next few hours, more evidence emerged. Photographs taken in the morning show destroyed buildings, charred structures, and broken windows. Some hangars appeared to be partially collapsed. Satellite image experts noted changes in the building's outline. This means that key workshops were affected. The effect of the attack was immediately apparent. The first analytical reviews began to appear on international resources. Turkish commentators recalled that the Bayraktar project in Kyiv had not only military but also symbolic significance. Ukraine hoped to demonstrate its ability to engage in joint production with an ally. Now, however, the enterprise has been taken out of the game for an indefinite period. It is important to emphasize the psychological aspect. For Ukraine, the Bayraktar plant was a prestigious project. Significant funds and political capital were invested in it. Every report of a new delay was painful, and the current strike, the fourth in the last 6 months, has called into question the very possibility of a quick launch. For local residents, it was another night of anxiety. People once again spent hours in shelters, listening to the sounds of explosions. Many said they woke up from the vibration of the windows. Social media was filled with stories of children crying in basements and adults trying to calm them down. It was a reminder that even the country's capital is not completely safe. Thus, the moment of the attack became not only a military action, but also a powerful informational signal. Kyiv showed the vulnerability of its key projects. And for Ukraine's international partners, it became clear that even important and carefully guarded facilities can be hit. The attack on the Bayraktar plant in Kyiv instantly became the #1 topic, not only for the Ukrainian media, but also for international publications. The strike on the facility, which was in the final stages of launch, caused a wide resonance and immediately raised several difficult questions for Kyiv and its allies. The first effect was the suspension of production plans. The factory, which had been talked about for over a year, was supposed to symbolize a new era of cooperation between Ukraine and Turkey. With its launch, Kyiv would have been able to independently produce drones, which have become one of the key elements of the war. Now these plans are on hold again. According to MP Igor Zinkovich, the strike has set the project back indefinitely. For Ukraine, this is not just a blow to the defense industry. It is a signal to society and the army that even in the capital, it is impossible to feel completely safe. Each new raid creates psychological pressure. Citizens are increasingly asking themselves how capable the authorities are of guaranteeing security. For the military, the loss of the future plant means a shortage of equipment on which high hopes had been pinned. The international reaction has been mixed. Turkey, which has invested significant funds and effort in the project, has refrained from making harsh comments. Officials limited themselves to cautious statements that work on launching the enterprise would continue. However, questions were raised in the Turkish media and among experts. Is it worth continuing to invest in such a vulnerable facility if it is constantly under attack? The United States and a number of European countries expressed concern. Their officials stressed that Russia continues to strike targets that are important for Ukraine's defense. At the same time, they again promised to increase arms supplies. However, analysts note that even with an increase in external aid, its effectiveness is reduced if Kyiv's internal projects are destroyed before they are even launched. The informational effect has become an important element. Russian sources emphasize the precision of the strike and its significance in disrupting Ukraine's plans. In response, the Ukrainian side tried to minimize the scale of the incident, claiming that the plant was not yet operational and therefore the losses were not critical. Nevertheless, the fact remains. The enterprise, which was supposed to start production in August, has been shut down again. Military experts call this attack part of a broader strategy. On the night of August 28th, Ukraine suffered one of the most massive strikes of the entire conflict. There were hundreds of targets in the air, and the Bayraktar plant was one of the key ones. This approach shows that Moscow is seeking to simultaneously overload the air defense system and disable critical infrastructure. The consequences for Ukraine are serious. The disruption of the factory's launch means that drone supplies will depend exclusively on external suppliers. This limits Kyiv's capabilities in the long term. In addition, the country's reputation as a reliable partner for joint projects has been damaged. Foreign investors see the risks associated with the war and may refuse to make new investments. The political effect within Ukraine is also noticeable. Tension is growing in society. People see that even symbolic projects, such as the Bayraktar plant, cannot be protected. This causes discontent and questions for the country's leadership. Opposition politicians are already using the situation to criticize the authorities, accusing them of being unable to protect key facilities. At the same time, Kyiv's supporters claim that the project will be restored. They assure that Turkey and Ukraine will not abandon their cooperation and will bring the plant to launch. However, experts doubt that this will happen in the coming months. Each new attack delays the deadline and requires additional investment. Thus, the political and military impact of the strike has manifested itself on several levels at once. For Ukraine, it is a loss of time, resources, and trust. For Turkey, it is a blow to its image and economic interests. For Russia, it is an opportunity to demonstrate the effectiveness of its strategy and inflict significant damage on its adversary. The international community is reacting with caution. Some are calling for increased aid to Kyiv, while others are beginning to consider the risks of investing in a country where even the capital remains under threat. After the attack on the Bayraktar plant in Kyiv, many experts are wondering what will happen next. Some argue that the project will be restored, while others are convinced that repeated strikes will make its launch impossible in the foreseeable future. To understand the prospects, we need to consider several possible scenarios. The first scenario is optimistic for Kyiv. Ukraine, together with Turkey, repairs the damaged workshops, strengthens the facility's defenses, and deploys additional air defense systems. After a few months, production resumes, albeit with a delay. In this case, Kyiv gets a chance to regain its lost prestige and show its partners that even under pressure, the country is capable of implementing joint projects. However, this will require significant funding and political will from Ankara, which already has doubts about the reliability of its investments. The second scenario is protracted. The damage turns out to be too serious. Repairs drag on for years. Each new attack delays the deadline. As a result, the plant exists formally but does not operate at full capacity. Ukraine continues to depend on external supplies of drones, and Turkey gradually reduces its activity in the project, switching to other markets. This outcome is most likely, given that the facility has already been hit 4 times in the last 6 months. The third scenario is the most severe. The plant completely loses its prospects. Repeated attacks make its operation impossible. Turkey withdraws its specialists and equipment, and the project is effectively frozen. For Ukraine, this will be a serious blow to its defense industry and political position. In this case, Kyiv will have to look for new areas of cooperation and rely entirely on the help of its Western partners. The international consequences will also be serious. For Ankara, the issue is not only about lost investments, but also about reputation. Turkey positions itself as a reliable partner in the field of defense technologies. An unsuccessful project in Kyiv could affect its relations with other countries. Already, some experts note that Ankara will be more cautious in choosing partners, especially in regions where there is war. For Russia, the success of the operation has a double effect. Militarily, it slows down the arrival of new drones at the front. Politically, it demonstrates to Ukraine's allies that even key projects can be disrupted. This puts pressure on Kyiv and forces it to spend energy and resources on recovery. Ukraine finds itself in a difficult situation. On the one hand, the authorities are obliged to declare that the project will be restored and continued. On the other hand, the public sees that the attacks are recurring and that defenses are insufficient. This causes tension within the country and criticism of the leadership. On a global scale, the story of the Bayraktar plant shows the vulnerability of modern military production. Even high technology and international investment do not guarantee protection in the event of a large-scale conflict. In this sense, the situation with the Kyiv plant is a lesson for all countries that are making plans to develop their defense industry in risk areas. In summary, it can be said that the strike on the Bayraktar plant was an event that changed the strategic picture. It affected military plans, economic calculations, international relations, and public sentiment. And regardless of which scenario plays out, it is already clear today that this event will go down in history as one of the key episodes of the war. We will continue to monitor developments, analyze new facts, and share with you the full picture of what is happening. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest episodes. There are still many events ahead that will determine the future. We will analyze each of them so that you can see the whole picture and draw your own conclusions.